Starting. And we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last meeting of the Environment Subcommittee before crossover. We have one bill we're going to consider. That's House Bill 840 with amendments. And I do want to thank the sponsor and Kristen for working so hard on the amendments, which I'll now ask Kristen to present.
I'm pulling them up. Okay.
So I guess, Kristen, when we considered the bill in the subcommittee meeting last week, some amendments, the sponsor amendments we already reviewed those. Is that correct?
So yes, this is a reprint with all of the amendments. And so we have additional amendments from last week. The first one on page 4 in line 4 is relating to current law. Under current law, the Department of the Environment is required, in consultation with the Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities, to adopt a methodology for identifying communities disproportionately affected by climate impacts. And this amendment delays the date by which that methodology must be adopted by 1 year. So we're still on page 4, down in line 29. This amendment makes the evaluations required under the bill apply to new permits. Keep going.
Yep.
Okay. The bill authorized the department to consider certain items in their analysis. This amendment on page 5, line 3 requires a climate and environmental equity evaluation to include the items highlighted. So existing environmental and climate data regarding the affected community, the applicant's facilities compliance record, and potential methods to minimize or mitigate potential adverse effects in the affected community. Moving along, when conducting the evaluations under the bill, the department's authorized to consider cumulative impacts as defined by the EPA. The next amendment in C2 requires the department to complete any of the assessments conducted under the bill within 60 days after it made that first determination that issuing an approval would impact an underserved community or an overburdened community. Did we talk about the language where it would direct any fee revenue into one of the 3 existing funds within MDE? That was to ensure that any fee revenue would stay with the department rather than go into the general fund. I can't remember if we discussed that last week.
I can't remember either.
Yeah. Well, I had them in separate amendments and I just can't remember. I know they were not, we weren't merged. So I think from the new amendments, everything else is, the sponsor had submitted amendments that we discussed last week that took out the labor piece. The Department of Labor under the bill was to submit an annual report on whether agency decisions support businesses that promote equitable labor and wage standards. And I believe we discussed this at the last time we brought up the bill, that those provisions are out. So
Right.
I think that's everything new.
Okay. I know these are the reprint was just sent out. We just reviewed, the new amendments. So why don't we give folks, actually, I see Delegate Foley has a question. I was going to say, why don't we give everyone a couple minutes to review, but Delegate Foley, why don't you lead off the questions?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is kind of the same question I had the other day, which is I still don't understand why these labor requirements were taken out of this bill. And maybe, Kristen, if you could explain that, like, at whose request was that? And, we heard something about the Senate bill, but we didn't really discuss it in detail. I just want to know why those were taken out. The bill was supposed to be climate, labor, and environment equity. And now it seems like labor has just fallen off completely. And I would like to know why. I'd like an explanation why.
I don't have an explanation from the sponsor. I do know that MDE brought it up in their testimony that those provisions were outside of their expertise, but there was a requirement that the Department of Labor was to be doing report, but I didn't receive a specific explanation.
Yeah, and Delegate, I really don't have anything to add to that. Again, I know this was at the sponsor's request, and as Kristen said, MDE felt uncomfortable with with having the Labor Department provisions in there.
Okay.
It's certainly, I'd say probably the most important part of the bill in terms of climate and environmental equity evaluations is still in the bill. Now that provision is changed from a may include an analysis of to shall include an analysis, and the different factors, and this is on page 5, that are to be considered have been narrowed. Though we did add one of the factors that had been in that list, we now break out separately cumulative impact and say that it can be considered, and then with a reference for defining cumulative impacts to the EPA's definition in their report on cumulative impacts research. And we also did put in a time period during which MDE would have to complete this climate and equity evaluation or a public health impact.
Right. And my recollection is that labor was recorded as being in favor of this bill. Are they still in favor of the bill?
You mean organized labor in particular?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't.
Yeah, Delegate Ruth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And oops, oh, sorry, the screen blanked. Not so much a question as just really some thoughts about this. And it's incredibly disappointing to remove the labor considerations from the bill, because I think it's important that we don't pit the environment and labor communities against each other. They're both really super important. And I've talked to a lot of people. I understand Department of Labor has concerns because they're not collecting this data and they don't have it available. I'm going to vote for the bill because this bill is about the health impacts of communities that are overburdened, communities that are burdened by toxic impacts, and people can get cancer and other ailments from those impacts and die. And I think it's really super important that we do that, environmental justice, equity, impact. But I just wanted to be on the record that I'm very disappointed about removing labor, and that I am committed to working during the interim with labor and the environment communities to try to find some solutions to ensure, and also, some of the same people who are impacted by the environmental and health impacts may also be workers who need those labor protections as well. Thank you.
Okay, fair points. Let me just by way of information say that in our Climate Solutions Now Act last year, we set up a number of working groups. One is, I mean, it doesn't, none of them get to the points directly that would have been directly reviewed by the proposed DOL report. But for example, just transition employment and retraining working group. Let's see. I guess that's probably the main one that, and of course also there is the environmental forget the full name, but the Commission on Environmental Justice that's under the purview of MDE. But, again, neither of the groups that I mentioned would have, I believe, issue findings that are the same or similar to what's proposed here, but there is some overlap. But in any case, point taken, Delegate Ruth. Okay, Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo the comments of my colleagues. I think it is very disappointing to see labor removed from this. Labor frequently impacts the same people that are in these overburdened communities. And so it's disappointing to see those separated out. I'm going to vote for the bill, but I'm very disappointed about that. And I hope that we come back with I'm committed to it, to bringing back that type of report throughout all of our work. So.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Other comments or questions? Actually, Kristen, I realize I did have the advantage of seeing the reprint before others on the subcommittee did. So I should have flagged this question earlier. Kristen, when page 4 at the end, when sort of talking about how the review process would be triggered, when we added the word new, modified permit by saying for a new permit. So I guess my question to you is, would that language apply to a permit for a new facility, as well as the renewal of an existing permit?
So it doesn't reference permit renewal. So I don't know whether a permit renewal would be interpreted by MDE as a new permit. Right now, the language that was requested just, and so this on the chat, it says it would not. Generally in law, a new permit or renewal, I mean, that language is included. So I think the intention is for this to apply to permits moving forward, and it just doesn't say anything specific to permit renewal.
Okay. Gabby Leach, I see you're on the call. Is that your understanding as well, that by having the bill apply to new permits, it would not apply to renewals of existing permits? It would just be again, permits requested by new facilities or the like.
Hi, Mr. Vice Chair, Les Knapp for NDE. And I tentatively believe, and I'm just literally looking at this language myself. I walked in to Gabby's office. I believe, as this is written, a simple renewal is not included in this. If there was a major modification or change to that permit, like an expansion, that I do believe counts as a new permit and would be looked at. But a simple renewal of an existing facility would not be included in this language as I read it.
Okay, so a major modification of an existing permit, and I guess you have regulatory language defining what that entails, what a major modification is.
Yes.
Okay, so major modification of an existing permit or a permit for a new facility, new company that comes under section 1601.1B. Okay. All right, good to know. Thank you. Okay. Other questions? Do folks want, a couple minutes to take a further look at the amendments? As you can probably guess, where I'm going with this is that if we would be willing to approve the amendments and the bill as amended, that certainly would be fine by me. Okay, Delegate Love.
Mr. Chair, move the amendments.
Okay, so a second. Second on the amendments?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone else?
Me. Because I second
Okay,
what the heck.
Delegate Morgan. Okay. Anyone opposed? Well,
Confused.
yeah, no, I'm a little confused too. I mean, I will support the amendments, but we need a majority of people who are here to pass the amendments. So,
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
yes.
Don't people need to vote one way or the other?
Yes, I mean, that is a good point. Unless anyone wants to abstain. But the people should be voting. Okay, let me go through this again. All those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. Okay, Delegate Love and Delegate Morgan. Me. Is there anyone else who's Delegate Guyton? Okay. Opposed, so that is 4. I count 4. We have 3, let's see, 3, 5, 7. 7 members present. So 4 is sufficient to pass the amendments. But just for the record, anyone who's opposed, raise your hands. Okay, so everyone else is just taking a pass, I guess.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I would like to be recorded as abstaining.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. The bill as amended. Is there a
Move the bill
motion?
as amended.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the bill? And for this, we do need 5 to pass, the majority of the full subcommittee. Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hands. Okay, so Sarah, Michelle, Jen, Sheila, me. Okay, anyone opposed? Raise your hand if you're opposed. Anyone abstaining?
I believe Delegate Foley was voting yes.
Yeah, I was trying to get in that I voted yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then in
Okay.
subcommittee, I believe it is just the majority of those present, unlike full committee. That's a little more informal. With
Oh,
respect
really?
to the
Okay,
rules.
even
Yeah,
to pass an amended bill.
right.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
just want to make sure you saw Delegate Morgan was opposed.
Oh, Delegate Morgan, you were opposed. Okay.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, well, bill passes as amended.
We still need to get the ECM was jointly assigned to this bill. So we still need to get their sign off. And
For process, it will go before the Environment and Transportation Full Committee. And then after the full committee takes a vote, then ECM, it'll be, our vote tally goes over to ECM and then they'll take up the bill.
okay. Okay, very good. So it's coming to a voting list shortly, maybe today, maybe.
I believe it's for this afternoon.
Okay,
That's my understanding.
great. Other questions?
Okay, I'm just, a question of timing. If we vote at 4:45 on this, are they meeting again before session?
I don't know what ECM is going to be doing.
Yeah, we don't know.
That's
I
fair.
mean, yeah, I mean, the question would be presented, for consideration to the chair of ECM right away. How quickly, he gets back to us, we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess that's it. Kristen, anything else we need to go over?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and see you in committee in about